Hello and welcome to Weft Blown. Today I am going to go through how I warp up a rigid heddle loom and my method of doing it. There are other methods out there. They all work, they all do something slightly different, but it is always pretty much the same thing of using direct warping method, which I will describe how that works. And I will show you how to tie on your yarn, how to get the yarn threaded up through Heddle, how to use two colours, and then once we've got it all, and how to then get it all threaded up and get it ready for weaving. The pattern I'm using is our Snow Flurry cowl pattern, but don't worry that it's a cowl pattern we're using. This works for scarves, it works for blankets, it works for cushions too. So it's all the same method for how to warp up a rigid heddle loom and how to get weaving. So let's get started and I'll show you how to get the yarn tied on onto the back of the loom. Right, so I'm going to show you how to tie on the warp threads and how to get warping. The pattern we are using instead is Snow Flurry cowl pattern, and on all the patterns that we do at Weft Blown, I'll always give you a little table if you're using two different warp thread colours to show you how many warp threads you need of each. So this basically tells you for the first colour, Skelister, which I think was the mottled colour on the original pattern, you start off with 10 threads. And then the solid colour, you have 2 warp threads, and then you've got 10 threads back for the marled one, solid 4, and so on. So this is just to help you realise the number of warp threads you need for the pattern to get it warped up. If you're confused already, don't worry, I'm going to talk through how all that works. So on the cricket we've got set up here, I have got it set up so that it is the distance away from the warping peg that we want it to be, which for the pattern is 2.3 metres. I have the cricket held on by clamps at the back of the loom. The cricket you can also clamp at the front of the loom too, depending how your table is. And this is on a fixed table that's not going to move. And if I just turn the camera around, you'll be able to see that the warping peg is at the other end of the room, fixed onto the table. So long as you've got your loom and your warping peg fixed solidly onto something that isn't going to move, you should be fine and that should all work out. So what we're going to do now is we are just going to start with the solid colour, which with this pattern it doesn't matter which way you start or which side, because it's the same repetition of numbers going either way. And I just want to start with green first because that's just me. So I have a basket at the back of the loom, and this is just to stop the yarn rolling about and getting stuck underneath the table, which it will do once it starts unravelling. So just drop your ball of yarn down into the basket. And at the back, we've got what are called apron rods. So this rod is different to the warp beam, which is where your warp yarn is going to wind around. And you always tie onto the little rod that's on the back of the loom. I've pulled over this Ashford knitter's loom here, just so you can see the difference in the Ashford looms. So the big bit here is a warp beam, which is going to be where your warp winds around. And then this is the apron rod, and that is the bit you tie your warp yarn onto. So we'll just start again. So we'll get the end of the green, and we are just going to attach that on with a knot, and I'm going to let that fall as well, which is quite good. So it's just a really simple overhand knot you want to tie onto the apron rod with. So just make a loop, pull that through, and then just do another overhand knot on top of it just to help keep it tight in. So that's still nice and tight and it's not going to move. And you want a little bit of space sort of going on at the back here so you can move things about. So we will start at the other side, actually thinking about this. That would make more sense because we're doing... So already, first mistake being done. We'll just switch over to this side. I'm purely doing it from left to right because of having to do it for this video and having to get set up. Otherwise, I would always work right to left because I'm just weird and have OCD with it that way. The loom we're using is a 10-inch loom, so we are going to be warping across the whole width of the loom because the pattern calls for a weaving width of reed of 10 inches. Now, you'll have noticed with rigid heddle reeds, they all come with slots and eyes, which are the little bits in the middle here. And as we're warping up this first stage, we're going to be pulling a loop of yarn through each slot, and then we're going to be dropping it over on the peg. So I've got my yarn here. I have my heddle hook, which has got a little hooky bit on it for pulling it through. And you go through the first slot. I just move this here so you can see that. And I'm going to grab the loop of yarn through. And I am going to take it over. Just move this really badly. And we're going to walk all the way up over to here. So as I say, it's a nice big loop that we've got going on. And it doesn't really matter too much whether the taut side it's attached on or if it's the loose side that goes down. But if you try and keep it on the same side of the peg, it helps. And you just drop the loop over the peg. And that's what you need to do. So we can now go and do the next one. Let's move that back. And I'm just going to bring us in a bit closer so you can see what's going on at the back of the loom. So your yarn is going to basically come through and it'll automatically be sitting either above or below the apron rod due to the process it's gone through to get it on there. So at the moment it's on top of the apron rod, so you just wrap it around, get your hook again, and we're going through the second slot this time. And I'm going to go pull that over onto the peg, which is just the same as it was shown before. And then we're going to go and do the third slot. So this time it's come underneath the apron bar, and I'm going to pop that through and then pull it. Pop that over the peg. Put that down. And then it's going over. So going back to our pattern where it said that we needed 10 of the first colour for the first part of the pattern. At the moment what we've got 6 warp threads. So this is where sometimes you can get a bit confused because you think, well, if I pull through one loop, does that count as one warp, as one on the pattern or 2? It counts as 2 because these are 2 individual threads that you're pulling through. So we've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 warp threads at the moment. So we do the next one. So we're going over the apron bar, under, pulling through with the heddle hook. Drop it over the peg. And then, so that's got 8 threads, so we're going under the apron rod this time, back through with the hook. I'm going to drop this one over. Right, so we now have our 10 warp threads all on the loom of the first colour. So we come to the exciting bit in the pattern where we now have to change and put in 2 of the second colour. So what to do is if you lift up, without knocking over many spinning wheels behind you, the yarn that you were using and just put that off to one side because we're going to keep this attached and not cut it off at the moment because it's just a sharp change. We're going to get a second colour now and find the end of that. And now we're just going to tie this on like we had done before. So again, just 2 knots. And then I'm going to get the hook and we're going to go in, pull that through, and then go and pop it on peg. So what you can do when you're using two different colours, you can either keep cutting the colour at the back as you're changing it, or you can keep it sort of live sitting at the back for you to then use the next time around. And because we've not got too much of a width of a change, so we've got 10 warp threads, which is about 1.5 inches, but not even that, it's fine to just keep the other colour going and sitting at the back. So I'm just going to take this one out of the basket, pop that to this side. And you can do it, as long as it's sitting at the side out of the way, it's fine. If you keep it in the basket with the other colour, they will vankle themselves up, which is also known as just getting a tangle and getting messed up. So if you take one out of the basket and then put the other one in, and then all you need to make sure you do is as you're going with this one, it's going again as if it's going to wrap around the apron rod. So we just pull it there, get my hook, and then I shall pull that through. Go and loop that on. So we want another 10 of these to go. So it's 2, 4. Now I'm going to show you the mistake that is easy to do, which is easy to do as a beginner, and it's always a good one to watch out for because occasionally you can just get a bit distracted by whatever's on TV or anything else that's going on while you're doing this. So if I went and pulled now and just pulled through the yarn, it's not gone around the apron rod. What it has done, it's gone around the back of the reed, so I'll just, you can see that okay on there. So if you've done that, what's going to happen is when you come to weave, this isn't attached to anything, so it's not going to cause any tension, and it's going to mess things up a bit. If you've done this mistake and you've already then carried on to here, and it's not until the very end you've noticed that you've made that mistake, what you can do, if you've still got a bit of yarn left, you can cut that yarn and tie it onto the back if you've got enough tension to do that. Or if you've got an extra little bit of yarn, you can just knot it onto either end and then make sure it ties around and goes around the apron rod. So it's quite an easy mistake to do, but it's also quite an easy mistake to fix. So it's always one to watch out for. So always make sure you're always going around the apron rod, and that will make your life a lot easier. Oops, so I'm just going to do this one. And try not to get it caught around my finger, which is what I've done. There we go. So this has got 6 threads again. The other thing that always happens whenever you're warping up is you always put your heddle hook somewhere, but you can never then remember to find it, or it rolls under a loom. So yeah, be prepared for that to happen. Okay, let's just go. So we've got the green 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So again, going back to the pattern, so that's just got 10 threads, so we now want 4 of colour 2. So again, just lift it out, basket, and pop this one back in. So this one's going to have a bit more of a longer reach to go over to where it's going to start again, but that's okay. We're happy to live with that. So make sure, again, it's originally coming out, it's wanting to go over the apron rod and then under it. And then get your hook. So pull that through. And then do the second one. And this one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to follow it around so you can see the peg. My amazing shonky camera skills. So another thing to watch out for, a mistake that's really easy to do, is putting the yarn and having it up at the top of the peg. What you want to make sure is the yarn keeps sitting down at the bottom of the peg. If it rises up, it's got a tendency to piang off and go everywhere, messes up your warp, which is not a good thing or a happy thing to do. So always make sure it goes down. And another thing people ask about is tension, how much tension to keep on. If you just keep it at an evenish tension so that when you pop it on, it's feeling tight enough, but not too tight. You will be adjusting tension in the next stage when you're winding it onto the back of the loom, so don't worry about that. So we'll go back, because I think that's just got our two of there done. So that's just got two there. And we'll go back to the green now, so this time we want 8 greens. I'm going to keep on, I'll just show you again the changing colour. So this time it's coming under the apron rod from the last bit, and then we just go through the hook and pull it through. So I'm going to keep warping this up, and I'll come back show you once we've got all the rest of the threads on and done. Right, I'm now getting near to the end of needing to use the solid colour in the green. So I'm just going to take that through for its final loop. Aha, now this has come at quite a timely point, and that was not planned whatsoever. If you've got a knot in your yarn, which does happen, it can, it's always better to have the yarn knotted either at this end, at the apron rod end, at the peg end. If you have a knot appearing midway through your warp, you can have it there, but it is going to mess up how your finished piece is going to look like. So it is always better to make sure that you finish it off. You basically adjust it so that you tie on the new section of the yarn and have the actual knot sitting either at the peg end or down here at the apron end. But as we're going to be tying this off, it doesn't matter too much. So we're going to cut this off and tie it on. So hold the yarn at the side nearest the loom and then cut away from that bit and just snip it. And then you're just going to tie it off just as you tied it on. So just a simple knot and then another one on top just for added fun. Okay, and then we're just going to finish off now with the marled colour. And again, text off heddles. You'll notice the text off cord, that's on the apron rod. If you try and make sure that the warp yarn stay within this, it doesn't matter if it gets a little bit bowed on that side, and you can do it again. And just make sure when you're going either side of the middle ones, or any of the other ones you've got on, that your yarn sort of evenly matched up and kind of roughly works in the centre of the reed. So we'll just do these final 5 loops. One. Oops. Didn't know for that to be the first thing I've kicked. This is also a good example of how to not wind up a good ball of yarn. This one keeps getting tangled up. So just pull that straight. Go. Strap it back in. Two. Three. 4. Keep managing to hit that dodgy floorboard. Right, so I know this is going to look a bit weird, but I am going to actually take it to this side of the heddle. And it's fine to do that because when we're thread up, I'll make sure that it all sort of embodies in. I, of course, designed this pattern on my 15-inch loom and I forgot there's always a little bit missing on the 10-inch. But it's fine, this will work, honestly, believe in me, it'll be fine. Okay, so that's just got our final 10 loops there. So I am just going to cut off now, and again I'm going to make sure it's on the side of the text-off cord. So snipped off and then just tie that off. So that's just got everything on, it's all on and it's all nicely fixed onto the loom. And as you can see, it is all nicely going around the warping peg at the other side. So the next stage is we're going to be taking off the peg and we're going to be winding it onto the back of the loom. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do the scary bit, and that's taking off the warping peg. Now, those who have done lessons with me in the past, I am going to do this a little bit different. You can do this in two ways. You can cut the warp yarn at the peg. Don't do it just yet. I'm going to show you how to do it safely. Or you can just knot it off. And recently I've just been knotting it off because that way, when you've wound it on, if there's a little bit of tension difference, or the peg's not being quite centered on with the loom, then it does help getting your yarn sorted. So the first thing to do, grab the yarn, hold the yarn, don't let the yarn go. Keep a very strong hold of it, and then lift it off the peg. Keep holding the yarn, do not let go, and then just do a very simple knot like that. And do not tie this knot tight. It can just be like that, and you can just leave it, and then you can just let the tension go. And what it'll do, it'll then just want to bounce back to the loom, and you can have it either sitting on the floor or just sort of draped off the table, however you want to manage it, in whatever way. So let's get round to actually winding onto the back beam, onto the warp beam, back beam, same thing. So now we're going to wind the yarn onto the warp beam at the back of the loom. And when you're winding on, you want something to go between the warp threads to help keep the tension even. If you didn't have anything around between the warp threads as they go on, they're going to squish onto themselves and create really nasty tension, and that's not going to be good for you at all. So what I use is I use bits of paper, so I'd use either old printouts or handily, and this is no offence to Ashford, they're old catalogues, not the current catalogues. Current catalogues are very good and useful for putting in between the warp layers as we wind on. So you can just honestly get this going round to a position where it's nearly there. Just turn the table a bit, as you can see. And then, so I've got the apron rod coming down near to the warp beam at the back, and I am going to just feed this through and just get this to be caught on by the cords and try and make it straight as well, which is about trying to do 5 things at once, and it does all kind of work. Just straighten that out a bit. So now that that paper's caught in, now we're going to apply the tension onto the warp. So do this by sort of splitting it into half and then just comb it through and make sure it's all kind of nice and even. And then hold onto that section and then do the same with this bit. Okay, and then hold both bundles in the middle. So the reason for holding onto the tension is you want it to wind onto the back under taut tension, and that is going to help with your weaving. If you do not get this bit right and get the tension even, as you weave, you will get slack areas where it's not going to be as tight as it would have been if you'd paid attention to this bit. This is the most crucial part of the entire warping stage and the entire weaving stage. If you don't get this part right, then it will have a knock-on effect on your weave. So I've got it tensed up. I'm holding with one hand. My other hand is going to be turning the handle. And it's going to make a lovely squeaky sound. And it's just going to put the paper on, just readjust the paper a bit. You can let go at any point. It's just fine to let go. Worlds will not end. You can just re-tension it up a bit again. So just comb it through a bit. And then grab it all together. And then just wind on. Now, that is me come to the end of the first bit of paper. So I am now going to add in another bit of paper. So as I said, you can use anything you want. So you can use newspaper, you can use wrapping paper, lining paper for walls, or even sort of brown postal paper works quite nicely and good. Okay, so that's the second bit of paper in. And just going to wind that on. Tension reset again. So you see, you can do this one person. If you have got another person available that is useful at winding on, then that is good. I'll just keep winding it. So I'm just going to move this to the back of the camera so you can see a little bit better. So what you want to do, you want to make sure that here the outer warp threads are sitting on the bit of paper, and again on the other side. If the warp threads come off and don't sit on that bit of paper, that's going to cause you loose edges, which we don't want, and that's not so fun. So always make sure that your warp threads are sitting on paper. And I'll just add another bit. Okay, and we'll just tighten it up again. So you want a good even tension. It doesn't have to be rock hard tight, just nice even tension. All the yarn's going on at the same tension as it's getting wound on. So you can see the yarn start to come off the back there, so you can just poke it over. Straighten that bit of paper out a bit. Re-tension it up. And go again. Still on, which is fitting okay. And now, this paper has gone skewy there. So I'm just going to pop that there. The one thing I did forget to say is make sure you've still got your loom clamped at the table at this stage. That's important so your loom doesn't go wandering off. As always in the game of paper chicken, you always need one more sheet. Nearly there. Okay, we want to get it just so that the knot is sitting at the front of the reed, which hopefully you can see there. Let's bring it round. So that's the knot sitting at the front of the reed, and that's the state we want to be for doing this next stage, which is going to be threading up the eyes in the heddle. Okay, so I'm now going to just unclamp the loom from the table. Right, we're all safe to go. Now, before you unclamp and before you move the loom, make sure that knot is still there, because if it isn't and you lift it up, the heddle can go flying out and everything can fall out, and that's not fun. Okay, so now that I'm sitting down comfortably, I'm going to get started on threading up. Now, one thing just to point out, all rigid heddle looms have all got this notch in the back. And that notch in the back means that you rest the loom on the table like this, and you have the front of the loom sitting on your legs. This is the most ergonomic way to be sitting with your loom instead of having it flat on the table, because you can have everything coming down towards you to fit in fine. So now that I'm sat down and I'm not going to move, I am just going, in fact, I'm going to get the scissors towards me first. That'll be a bit easier. I am just going to undo this. And this is why I said earlier, don't tie it tight, because you need to undo it again. So it's basically just there just to hold the thread gently while you're doing that last bit. Okay, so now that we've got, because all the threads are in loops, we just need to cut those off at the bottom now. Got all those. Another one. Obviously be careful with scissors, don't try and cut into your hand because that's not a good idea. Okay, that's this all done. Okay, so we're now on to the next stage, which is threading up the eye threads, the eye slots in the heddle with the warp threads. So what I've done is I have untied the knot as it was sitting in the front of the reed. I have also, and I'm going to hold this on properly, sitting down in a chair with the loom resting against the table. All the looms have got this notch onto the back of them, and that's so that they can rest nice on the table and have the front of the loom sitting on your lap. I would always keep the knot that you had it tied in sitting against the reed until you're sitting down, and then you can take the knot out safely. And as I said, I've cut through all the loops, so each of the yarns are in separate individual threads. So to start tying the warp threads through the eyes, what we do, you can go left to right or right to left. I'm going to go left to right this time because we've got this pair of threads right at the outer edge, which you normally wouldn't have, but you can get away with it for this. And I am going to just pull the two of them together top, and then get my threading hook, pop it through the eye here, and then just grab one of the threads, doesn't matter which one, and then just pull it through the eye slot there, the eye there. So it means that when you lift it up and down, the thread that's going through the eye will always be stuck in the eye, and the other one can freely move up and down, which helps for the weaving with the reed. So I'm just going to do that again. So go in, heddle through the eyes, and then you just pull the warp thread through. And go to the next one. So go in, heddle hook through your eye, and we pull it through. So we just check those ones so far are okay. So yeah, that's fine. That's working up and down. And then we just keep working along. Right, so I have now got all the yarns threaded up through a slot or an eye as we go across, but I have got one mistake at the end, which you might notice that here I've got two threads going through the eye. There's one through a slot here, there's one through an eye there, and then there's an empty slot here. So what to do with that is just go back and pull out the thread that's in the eye and then bring it into the slot. So always just make sure you've got everything going through all nice and easy, and then just again, always just check that they're all threaded up, all nice and happy, which we have now. So what we're going to do now, we're going to tie it onto the front apron rod here. Just pull this back a bit. So again, we're just going to tie it onto the thin bit of wood, not the big bit of wood, and I'm just going to release it off so it's a bit nearer to where the yarn is. And we're going to tie up in bundles that are about 1 inch wide. 1 inch wide is quite a nice good width. It means you've got kind of just a nice enough number of yarns. If you go wider than that, that can affect your tension issues. If you go smaller, it's faffy and it takes more time. So I prefer to do it in inch wide bundles. The reed we're using is an 8 dents per inch reed, which means there's 8 warp threads per inch. And I'll explain about that in another video in the future. And what we're going to do, we're going to get the yarn, we're going to get 8 warp threads here, which I've got here, and I've split it into 2 bundles of 4. And then we get the apron rod, that's a bit too long, and we just put one bundle there and then take the end of the bundle out to one side, the other bundle with the other end out to that side, bring it into the middle, and then tie it into a knot. And then just to help anchor things, we'll do the same on the other side. And we've got 4 threads there, 4 threads there. And we'll just do 2 bundles, take off to the side, and then bring it into the middle, and then tie in a knot. There is a reason for this, which is going to become clear while we're doing this type of knot. So I'm just going to keep going. So that's 4 and 4. Four there. Right, so I'll do this slowly again. So 2 bundles out to the edge, and then into the middle, and then just single knot. And I say just a single knot just now, don't do a double knot. Go for 4, and I'm sort of going out from the edges, working into the middle, because again that just helps keep everything a bit more balanced and a bit happier. And try and make sure I've got the even number of bundles on either side of the midpoint on the apron rod. Again, just helps things, and also just looks nice. But it does help with your tension. Now, when you get to the last bundle, if you've got a different number of threads than what you would had in the other bundles, that's okay. If it's, say, just too short, then you can split that into 2 bundles of 3, or if you've just got 2 left, then split them into another bundle. But happily we've got another 2 bundles of 4, and we shall just tie them on. So that's them all set up like that. Now, if you move your hand across the warp and check the tension, you'll see that some bits are flabbier than others. So what you can do, first of all, to tighten up the tension, if you just turn the handle until it can go no more. Sometimes it fights back and makes squeaky noises like that. And then again, bounce your hand across. So this bit here feels tight to me, as that bit, this bit's quite loose. Okay, so now we're going to see the reason for the magic knot that we were just doing a minute ago. So you push your hand to check the tension, just bounce your hand across the warp, and you'll see some bits are a bit flabbier than others. So this bit definitely here is a little bit looser. So if we get both ends of the knot, and if we slide it up towards the heddle and bring it back down, that then tensions it up nicely. Do the same for this next one. Bring it up and back down. Again, tensions it all nicely. Just keep working our way along. Even on the bits that are a bit tighter, that's okay. Keep tension it up. And you can be quite firm with this, as long as your yarn can handle it, which is why we always use a strong yarn for warps. And again, just move your hand over to try and see how it's feeling, making sure it's all to the right level that you want it to be. So this bit's just a little bit looser than the ones either side of it. These ones in the middle are a bit looser again. That feels pretty much spot on, bar that one there. Right, so that's this all nice and taut. You just double check by putting the heddle in the up position that it's okay. That feels nice and tight, which it does, that's all fine. It's always good to also just make sure you definitely got the edge ones tight, because that will help your edges massively as well. So once we've got it all to good enough tension, then all we need to do is put a second knot into it. Just work our way along, and you can also again just quickly re-tension tie as you go. Keep working our way along. Just check that's all still fine. Okay, so that's just all nice and taut, and we're ready to go. Just double check it again with the heddle in that position. That's all fine. And down position, it's all nice and tight. And we can get weaving now. Thank you for watching our video on how to warp up a rigid Heddle loom. Really hope that you've enjoyed it. There is now also available on how to weave in a rigid Heddle loom available on YouTube too. And for more information, do check out our website at weftblown.com, and also you can come and join us on our community at weftblowncloud.com.